The idea behind the modern man is a soft man, and that's not how men are designed to be. Some days ago, I was involved in a conversation with a colleague of mine. She's a host on radio here in Jos, and she has a show where she talks about gender based violence and everything in between. And so, 2 weeks ago, she wanted to have a conversation for men, an open conversation where men could come and talk about the things they were dealing with. As much as it was a good idea, I had my qualms with it. However, my qualms really started when I read a line from the prep she sent. So, usually in radio, what happens is before you go on the show, you give a brief about the topic you want to talk about, the guests you would have, and possible talking points you'll be exploring. And it's done that way so that the producers and the different heads would know what your show is about and vet it before it goes on air. So one of the lines from her prep said, the modern man should have aggression replaced with empathy. And while that sounded good, and I think if I didn't know any better, I would have thought, yes, it's good. We need more empathetic men. It showed me the false narrative being spread across board, especially amongst women. And if I'm allowed to push this narrative a bit further, around within the circle of feminism, the idea that men are aggressive and harm women because men do not have empathy. There is this very strange yet widely believed notion that the opposite of aggression is empathy. And see, what they do in trying to build empathetic men is build men who are more feminine than masculine. The idea that a man cannot be aggressive and empathetic is false. The idea that the only way for a man to treat a woman right is for him to be less aggressive. Aggressiveness is what makes a man a man. And I cannot say this enough. First, because I used to think that men were too aggressive, men were too hard, men were too everything but soft. And I defined a good man as a soft man, one who was constantly apologizing, one who did not let his anger show too much, one who was always within the confines of acceptable behavior. And if we're being honest with ourselves, the idea of acceptability in men's behavior have been defined a lot more than we want to agree with by women. You see, men are designed to be aggressive. I think about men, and I think about the natural instincts we had as children. As a child growing up in Lagos, somewhere in Ikorodu, Ebute to be precise, one of the things that fueled us as guys, or as male children, was when we went out of our way to do really crazy and aggressive things. Jumping from high buildings to the ground, going into bushes to look for grasshoppers, and do some of the most stupid things a child would do. Those were the moments we were excited. Yes, we did have times when we played mommy and daddy and cooked food off plastic tins or steel things. But those moments were not as fulfilling as when we rode our bikes under the rains. Those moments were not as fulfilling as when we played football under the rains. Those moments were not as fulfilling as when we went to farms to get firewoods and look for fruit for ourselves and for our family. We found joy in just being in the wild, searching and exploring. I remember one of those days we had gone to this place. It's the I think it's forgotten of the place right now. When we were kids, we went to this farm, and for hours we were farming. Now, I hadn't been exposed to farming at the time, so it looked new to me. But just the thought of being there with my fellow guys and just digging and getting dirty and playing and running around in that bush was bliss for me. That is what male aggression means: work, pushing hard. I also remember as children, guys, one of the things that got us closer was when we fought. When we had altercations that resulted into physical battles, we became closer. I also remember that when we played football on different pitches, different sand fields, one of them is called Sandfield. I remember it now quite memorably. And when we had football matches on weekdays or weekends, it usually became a lot more interesting. Somewhat when somebody tackles another opponent quite harshly. And so usually then we play in 5 aside or 3 aside, and then somebody who is like an egmont who go in the area tackles another person, and the opponent comes up to him and go, "Hey man, that was bad," all chest pumping and shouting and just being aggressive. And if the other person doesn't apologize, we then go, "You know what, it's fine, let's go with it." And we all are kicking legs and brushing people off the ground and all of that. Now, while somebody would say, "But that was very harsh, that was fun for us," while some of us at some points would have to leave because we didn't want our legs broken for the next game, we stayed back to enjoy it, sometimes participating, sometimes cheering them on. Now, I understand that this idea of men being aggressive and fighting and thumping their chest against each other, sometimes resulting into fisticuffs when need be, might not appeal to the sensibilities of the air quotes modern man defined by the air quotes modern woman, but that's who men are. That's what makes us men. Aggressiveness. Now, although I understand that the idea of saying empathy should replace aggressiveness is because a lot of the times when we talk about gender-based violence and women getting abused in their homes and rapes and all of that, men are the center of it. I understand the conversation, but I think it's a false idea that a man cannot be aggressive and still be empathetic. You see, it reminds me of what our forebears used to do. Men's aggressiveness before the modern day of what a new modern man should be like was heavily dependent on how aggressive he would be. Men would gather together in tribes and go out of their houses into the bush to hunt for animals and get firewoods and stuff for the family. The aggressiveness in specific moments in time was very much needed to provide, protect, and create and procreate for their family. But now, some would say, "Oh, we live in a modern world. The rules that applied in the Stone Ages do not apply now." And I think it's false. I think it's false because while the terms and conditions of existence as people have changed, right? Technology has made the world a different place than what it was some thousands of years ago. The core of our survival, the core of existence still relies heavily on aggressive men. Aggressive men in ambition, aggressive men physically, aggressive men in every area of our lives. However, and I should say this here, I'm not here to say that men who abuse women physically and sexually should be excused. I'm not making excuses for them and say, "Oh, it's fine. It's because it's in a man's nature to be aggressive. Therefore, it is acceptable for him to abuse people." I am saying that empathy and aggressiveness can coexist in a man. I am saying that the reason why some men are aggressive and harsh and inhumane to the other gender isn't because of the aggressiveness. It's not because they lack empathy in that sense. It is because of a deeper problem. Now, I'm not here to diagnose societal ills and prefer solutions to them. But here's my thought. Have we ever imagined that men who abuse women might just have too much energy and less outlet for the aggression? Have we ever thought that maybe we have a society that give men less channels to put those aggressiveness they are naturally born with, and therefore leading them to channel the aggressiveness into the right things and wrong things and wrong people? Have we ever imagined a society where men are allowed to be aggressive? Again, let me say this here as a strong caveat. I'm not giving excuses for men's abuse on women and children. I'm not saying those people should be excused because there aren't enough outlet for the aggression. I am saying that what if we peel back the layers of what we see, look deeper within the man, and ask, why are you aggressive in this direction? Because the truth is, every man, except socialized out of it, is aggressive. Every man wants to let out the aggressiveness in him. That's how he becomes better. That's how they become successful in business. That's how they become successful in their careers. Being aggressive. We cannot and should not remove aggressiveness from masculinity because it appeals to the sensibilities of femininity. Hell no. A man should not be defined by what a woman thinks a man should be like. A man should be defined by what men think and define a man should be like. And let's be honest, the real men are the ones who are aggressive. I should say also here that aggressiveness doesn't always have to be physical. I think that the reason why we have a lot of these men physically abuse women and children is because they haven't found the right channel to put the aggressiveness into, whether it is in their business, whether it is in your jobs, whether it is in the gym, building your bodies. But I strongly believe that if we create wider avenues for men to express and channel the aggressiveness, we might see a reduced level of sexual and domestic violence. And I also know here that these acts by men are not always predicated on aggressiveness and looking for a channel for them. Sometimes, and some research have even shown that most times, this aggressiveness and actions against women and children are predicated on the basis of power control. Now, that is a conversation for another day. But I just want to say here that you do not make men better men by making them less aggressive. You make them better men by giving them channels to be aggressive in. You make men better men by giving them purpose and a vision, something bigger than them that they can pour out their energy and aggressiveness into. You can and should not replace aggressiveness with empathy. Both of them can coexist, and both of them have coexisted for a long time. We need more aggressive men who are empathetic, not more empathetic men who are not aggressive. Aggressiveness for a man is needed for sustenance, for growth, and for development. And so this is me saying, dear man, don't let them tell you that your aggressiveness is bad. Don't let them lie to you that your aggressiveness is a sin against humanity, against women or children. No, it is a blessing. All you need to know is, how do I channel my aggressiveness into the things that matter? And when you find that answer to that problem, things become better for you. So men do not need to be empathetic out of aggressiveness. They need to be taught how to be both, maybe not in equal measure, but enough that they are not passing and exerting the aggressiveness on the wrong thing. I hope it made sense here. And if I didn't, well, that's it. I'm out.